Good to go, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment. It is Thursday, February the 19th, 2026, 6:45, and I will call this meeting to order. Remind members of any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none noted. Moving on with section 3, adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes from the Committee of Adjustment held December the 4th, 2025 have been circulated. Everyone's had opportunity to peruse them, I hope. And if there are no errors or omissions, I would accept a mover and seconder for the following: that the minutes from the Committee of Adjustment meeting held December the 4th, 2025 be approved as presented. Committee member Weisler and committee member Chilcott. Second, all in favor? That's carried. Moving on with the first application is minor variance application COA 0126 Buchert at 6540 Richmond Road. The purpose of this variance is to grant relief from the following zoning bylaw regulations for the construction of an accessory building located at 6540 Richmond Road, east side, south of Calton Line in the hamlet of Calton. Section 9.7 to permit the maximum floor area for accessory uses of 90 square meters, whereas 75 square meters is required. And section 9.51 to permit a maximum height for an accessory building of 5.2 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. The effect of this variance is to permit a new single detached dwelling with an oversized accessory building in the hamlet residential zone. At this point, we'll entertain the staff presentation. Report DS 0326 by Margaret Underhill, Secretary Treasurer, regarding minor variance COA 0126 Buchert at 6540 Richmond Road. Marg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee. The report before you is for consideration of Abram and Maria Buchert's application for minor variance for their property at 6540 Richmond Road, as already stated. The purpose is to grant relief so that they can construct a new single detached dwelling with an oversized accessory building in the hamlet residential zone. So they're looking for two variances, section 951 and 97. The planner's memorandum dated February the 10th outlines the requirement for a minor variance to address the maximum floor area and maximum height for a future constructed accessory building in the HR zone. The municipal planner and staff concur the application meets the criteria and to grant relief from the zoning bylaw sections as stated. So the recommendation is before you. Again, they're looking to do a future construction. They're looking to build their single detached dwelling with this future detached workshop, and the recommendation is before you for consideration.
Thank you for that presentation. Is the applicant present and wishes to make any comments? You're welcome to if you wish. If you do, come on up to the microphone. Okay. Any public submissions?
There are none.
Thank you. Moving on to committee questions and discussion. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, we will move right on to the decision of the committee. We have a proposed or a draft motion before us. It reads that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's reports DS 0326 regarding the Buchert minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect which helped the committee to make an informed decision. Now, whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45(1)(1) of the Planning Act and is considered minor. Therefore, application COA 0126 submitted by Abram and Maria Buchert, subject to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance to permit the construction of a personal shop, is granted to allow relief from the Municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw number Z456/2003 regulations as follows. Section 9.5.1 to permit the new shop to have a maximum accessory building height of 5.2 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. And section 9.7 permit a maximum floor area for an accessory building of 90 square meters, whereas 75 square meters is required. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by committee member Chilcott. Seconded by committee member Emerson. All in favor? That is carried. Moving on with the second application is minor variance application COA 0226 Tatar 56748 Eden Line. Purpose of this variance is to grant relief from the following zoning bylaw regulations for the construction of an accessory building located at 56748 Eden Line, north side, west of Plank Road in the hamlet of Eden. Section 9.7 to permit a maximum cumulative floor area for accessory uses of 93 square meters, whereas 75 square meters is required. And section 9.5.1 to permit a maximum height for an accessory building of 5.8 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. The effect of this variance is to permit an oversized accessory building in addition to an existing shed in the hamlet residential zone. At this point, we will entertain the staff presentation. That would be report DS 0426 by Margaret Underhill, Secretary Treasurer, regarding minor variance application COA 0226 Tatar at 56748 Eden Line. Mark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to the committee. The report before you is for the minor variance application for relief for 56748 Eden Line. They again are looking for construction of a personal storage shop, a workshop, and there's two variances, two sections they'll need to have consideration for. Section 951 to permit the maximum height over what is permitted, and 9.7 for a cumulative floor area for accessory uses, because they already do have a small shed. So they are asking for 93 square meters, whereas they're limited to 75 currently in the HR zone. So the effect of the variance, yes, is to allow for the future construction of an oversized accessory building. Committee of Adjustment must be satisfied that it meets the 4 tests. The planner's memorandum dated February the 10th provides that analysis. The municipal planner and staff concur the application meets the criteria to grant relief from the 2 sections, and we provide a supportive recommendation for your consideration.
Thank you for the presentation, Mark. Is anyone aware? I don't believe the applicant is present or online. Any public submissions?
No, there are none.
Committee questions and discussion. Does anyone have any questions? All right, seeing none, we have a proposed motion that the Committee of Adjustment Secretary Treasurer's Report DS 0426 regarding the Tatar minor variance be received, and that the Committee of Adjustment considered all written and oral submissions received on this application, the effect of which helped the committee to make an informed decision. And whereas the committee agrees that the proposed variance as presented meets section 45.1.1 of the Planning Act and is considered minor. Therefore, application COA 0226 submitted by Rick Tatar and Monica Tomzak Tatar pursuant to section 45 of the Planning Act for a minor variance to permit the construction of a personal workshop is granted relief from municipality of Bayham zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 regulations as follows. Section 9.5.1 to permit the new workshop to have a maximum accessory building height of 5.8 meters, whereas 4.5 meters is required. And section 9.7 to permit a maximum cumulative floor area for all accessory uses of 93 square meters, whereas 75 square meters is required. Do I have a mover and seconder for that? Committee member Emerson will move. Committee member Chilcott will second. All in favor? That is carried.
Your worship, member Frozen has joined the meeting, and maybe we should have a minute to decision.
You would like, you're suggesting a polled decision or a recorded vote?
My apologies, your worship. With a minor variance, every member's vote is recorded.
Thank you.
But not on, like, in a specific recorded.
All right. How about we do it this way? Counselor Committee Member Froze, do you have any concerns or do you consent to this?
I have no concerns. I consent.
Okay, thank you. There, we have that recorded. Moving on then with the adjournment. The motion reads that the Committee of Adjustment meeting for consideration of minor variance application COA 0126 and COA 0226 be adjourned at 6:55 PM. And that in accordance with the regulations of the Planning Act, notices of decision be circulated by the Secretary Treasurer accordingly. Do I have a mover? And the seconder? So it's moved by Committee Member Weiser. I need a seconder. Committee Member Chilcott, all in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. We are adjourned.
How much you're gonna give, Ron?
Good evening and welcome to the regular session of council. It is Thursday, February the 19th, 2026, 7 PM, and I will call this meeting to order. And I'd like to take the opportunity to welcome those attending in the gallery as well as those virtually. I will remind members of any disclosures of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Seeing none noted. I don't believe there are any items not on the agenda this evening.
No additions tonight, Mr. Mayor.
And announcements. Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that the Edison, Vienna and Area Museum will be holding their second in their series of speaker series, February 21st, this Saturday at 2 p.m. And it's Dave Harding is presenting the Velocipede.
Thank you and that's at 2 p.m.
2 p.m.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to formally introduce Alan Bushel to the municipality. He'll be joining us over the next number of months as our clerk, as Megan Elliott will be on leave. So he will be handling a bunch of our clerk matters, including our upcoming election. So welcome, Alan, and it's great to have you here.
Welcome aboard. All right. Don't believe we have any presentations or delegations this evening, which brings us to the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. These minutes include the regular meeting of council held on February the 5th, 2026, as well as the statutory planning meeting held February the 5th, 2026. Those meetings, minutes have been circulated to council. Should there be any errors or omissions, please inform me. Otherwise, I would entertain a mover and seconder for the following. That the minutes from the regular meeting of council had held February the 5th, 2026, and the minutes of the statutory planning meeting held February the 5th, 2026 be approved as presented. Mover and seconder. Councillor Chilcott will move, Deputy Mayor Weiser will second. All in favor? That is carried. Skipping down to section 12, Development Services, Sustainability and Conservation. 12.1 correspondence and 12.1.1 to receive for information. 3 items. Notice of the public meeting regarding the final draft of official plan in the municipality of Bayham official plan review. Notice of public meeting regarding minor variance application COA 0126 Buchert. And notice of public meeting regarding minor variance application COA 0226 Tatar. Any questions on this correspondence? Seeing none, I need a mover and seconder for the following. That items 12.1.1A through C be received for information. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move. Councillor Chilcott will second. All in favor? Carried. 12.2 reports to council. We have report DS 0526 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding the rezoning application ZBA 2525 Neufeld at 54304 Eden Line. Margaret, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council. The report before you for rezoning application ZBA 25/25 Neufeld is for consideration to rezone a property at 54304 Eden Line, the north side of Eden Line and east of Cloden Road in the hamlet of North Hall. So the purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property from a dual hamlet residential and urban industrial zone to a site-specific dual hamlet residential and urban industrial zone, which requires the following provisions. Section 9220.2 to permit an additional residential unit, an ARU, with a maximum gross floor area of 46%, whereas 40% is required in the bylaw. Section 9220.3 to permit a setback of 24 meters to the center line of a county road, whereas the setback is 26 meters in the zoning bylaw. Section 2313.8.2 to permit a lot frontage of 26 meters in an M4 zone with no municipal water or sanitary services, whereas 30 meters is required in the bylaw. And section 2313.8.3 to permit a side yard of 3.3 meters in the M4 zone abutting a residential zone, whereas a minimum of 7.5 meters is required in the bylaw. So the effect of the bylaw will be to adjust the current boundary between the M4 and the HR zones within the subject property to permit the ARU to be attached to the existing dwelling and also to recognize the actual location of the existing industrial business, while also permitting an ARU that exceeds the maximum floor area requirements and recognizes the existing deficient side yard and setback to the county road. Public meeting was held February 5th. The owner attended virtually and there were no signed-in attendees, and we've had no public comments to this point. Agency comments were received from LPRCA advising they have no concerns with the development because it is outside of their regulated area 15 meters outward from the Bartley Drain, which runs through the property. The planner's memorandum included in the report dated February 10th reviews the application and provides that it conforms to the BAM official plan and meets the general intent and purpose of our zoning bylaw. Staff and planner concur the rezoning application meets the policies, and we recommend approval to change the dual zoning from the HR M and M4 to the site-specific HR 20 and M4-8 zones to permit the development of the ARU and recognize the existing uses on the property. And the draft zoning bylaws included with the report for your consideration. And I leave it with you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that report, Mark. Any questions from council? All right, seeing none. I have a motion that reads that report DS 0526 regarding the Newfeld rezoning application ZBA 2525 be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015, it be pointed out that at the public participation meeting held February the 5th, 2026, associated with this application, there were no oral presentations and no written public submissions regarding this matter, and that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution, and that zoning bylaw number Z 456 2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on the subject property located at Part Lot 6, Concession 9, municipally identified as 54304 Eden Line, from dual zoned Hamlet Residential HR zone and Urban Industrial M4 zone to a site-specific dual-zoned Hamlet Residential HR-20 zone and Urban Industrial M4-8 zone to permit the development of an additional residential unit and recognize the existing uses on the property, which requires the following provisions. Section 9.2.20.2 to permit an ARU with a maximum gross floor area of 46% of the primary dwelling unit, whereas a maximum of 40% is required under Section 4.59E. Section 9.2.20.3 to permit a setback of 24 meters to the center line of County Road 44, known as Eden Line, whereas a setback of 26 meters is required under Section 4.221B. Section 23.13.8.2 to permit a lot frontage of 26 meters in an M4 zone with no municipal water or sanitary services, whereas a minimum of 30 meters is required under Section 23.4. Section 23.13.8.3 to permit a side yard of 3.3 meters in an M4 zone abutting a residential zone, whereas a minimum of 7.5 meters is required under Section 23.8. And that zoning bylaw number Z 820/2026 be presented to council for enactment. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Chilcott will move. Councillor Emerson will second. All in favor? That is carried. Moving on with the second report is report DS 0626 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding the rezoning application ZBA 0126 Wall 23 Oak Street. Mark, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council. The report before you is for rezoning amendment for 23 Oak Street, and the purpose of the amendment is to rezone the property from residential R1 to a site-specific residential R1-25 zone to permit a new accessory building, which requires the additional following provisions. Section 10.12.25 to permit a maximum height of the accessory building of 7 meters, whereas the maximum allowable is 4.5. And section 10.12.25 to permit a maximum floor area for an accessory building of 149 square meters, where a maximum floor area of 75 square meters is permitted in our zoning bylaw. The effect of the amendments is to permit the construction of the new accessory building for residential personal use. Because it exceeds the maximum height and floor area requirements for an accessory building, we are before you with the amendments. So the public meeting was held on February 5th, with one neighbor attending and speaking in opposition to the application. No additional public comments have been received. No agency comments were received. Neighbor Mr. Wood, residing at 26 Oak, spoke at the public meeting expressing his concern that the structure was too large, larger than his own house, and the size should be held to the allowable size to fit in with the surrounding residential area. The planner's memorandum included with the report dated February the 10th reviews the application and provides that it conforms to the BAM official plan and meets the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. It also does recognize Mr. Wood's comments. Staff and planner concur the rezoning application meets the policies. We do recommend approval to change the zoning on the property from the R1 to the site-specific R1-25 to permit the development of the additional accessory storage building on the subject lands. The draft zoning bylaw is presented for your consideration, and I leave it with you, your worship.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Mark. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Councilor Emerson.
Yeah, I think Mr. Wood's comments, some of them are, well, they're fair comments. And I guess there is a general concern in the area that could, with that height, possibly allow an ARU or, a business in there. So I don't know if anybody's seen the plans for the building and the truss design or whatever to ensure that that doesn't happen, or what stage does that happen? And I would assume that zoning would be protection enough against a business operating in there.
Mark, do you want to offer comments on that? If I recall reading in I don't know whether it was planner's comments or somewhere, there are no septic lines proposed for this. There are no water lines proposed for the accessory building.
No, and in the application, through your worship,
Yes.
in the application, the rezoning is being requested to permit the construction of the accessory shop with a loft for personal use, including a gym, man cave, and personal storage. They've made it very clear, and I made it very clear when I was questioning them when they were applying, that there was going to be no commercial business or commercial activity in the structure. And they confirmed that there was no intent for anything like that. And further to that, yes, the zoning would have to take into consideration any kind of commercial use in the detached building. Home occupations can happen in an R1. However, home occupation means it has to be in the home, not in a detached dwelling. So if there is any activity in a detached, we'd have to deal with that through zoning for permission.
Thank you. Does that answer some of those questions?
Well, I mean, it's not for me to say. I'm hoping that this discussion answers some of the concerns that are in the area. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Any other points from members of council? Mark, excuse me. I don't know, or I can't recall offhand what the height of the residential units in the area are. I realize that accessory buildings are restricted normally lower than residential heights. I think one of the major concerns was that the building height itself was out of character with the neighborhood. I'm not sure. I would.
yeah, that is, yeah,
It is larger or taller than the other buildings.
significantly, I think.
Okay. This lot backs onto the parkland, does it not?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, through your worship.
Okay, so it's not like someone in the back is gonna be looking in on it, but
Yeah, if I can clarify that, it backs on to partially the park area, but also the area where the 4 lots were created.
right.
Yes, it
Right.
backs onto that.
So there's a potential that could.
There's potential for residential behind it,
Yes, there is. All right, thank you.
or
for
some
that.
degree of it, anyway, yes.
Okay.
And further to your point, yes, the accessory buildings are limited to 4.5 meters. Yes.
I guess what I'm trying to tease out of the planning coordinator is that I don't believe there's anything within under the Planning Act here that to deny this. That's not challengeable through an OLT.
Well, through your worship, it is council's decision
Yeah.
whether you see that this is an appropriate use of the property. An applicant does have the ability to appeal a decision.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah. Just kind of what I was trying to get. Any other questions, concerns from members of council? All right. We have a draft motion. I will put it on the table or on the floor and see if anyone's interested in supporting it. The motion reads that report DS 0626 regarding the wall rezoning application ZBA 0126 be received for information, and that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015, it be pointed out that at the public participation meeting on held February the 5th, 2026, associated with this application, there was one oral presentation and no written public submissions regarding this matter, and that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution, and that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on the subject property municipally identified as 23 Oak Street, Vienna, from Village Residential R1 zone to site-specific Village Residential R1-25 to permit the construction of a new shop, which requires the following provisions. Section 10.12.25 to permit a maximum height for an accessory building of 7.0 meters, whereas a maximum height of 4.5 meters is required under section 10.11B. Section 10.12.25 to permit a maximum floor area for an accessory building of 149 square meters, whereas a maximum floor area of 75 square meters is required under section 10.11C. And that zoning bylaw number Z 821-2026 be presented to council for enactment. Is anyone interested in moving and seconding that motion? Oh, Councilor Froze? Thank you. Did I get a seconder? Councilor Emerson? All in favor? Opposed? Oh, okay, it's carried. Thank you. Moving on with the third planning report, report DS 0726 by Margaret Underhill, Planning Coordinator, Deputy Clerk, regarding the rezoning application ZBA 0226 Gunther at 53900 Heritage Line. Mark, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council. The report before you is for rezoning of a property in the hamlet of Richmond, identifies 53900 Heritage Line. The purpose of the amendment is to rezone the subject property from a hamlet residential withholding provisions to a site-specific hamlet residential zone. This is to allow for a new single detached dwelling, and it requires the additional following provision. Section 9.12.21.2 to permit a minimum rear yard of 8.2 meters, where a minimum rear yard of 9 meters is required under section 9.10. The effect of the bylaws to permit the construction of the new dwelling with the reduced rear yard setback within the HR zone, and to remove the holding provisions that are deemed no longer to be required as the site is not suitable for a subdivision, which is the H2 zone, and is no longer within the regulated area of the Long Point Region Conservation Authority, which is the H3 zone, asking for an environmental impact statement. The public meeting was held February 5th. No attendees and no public comments have been received. No agency comments were received other than LPRCA. But the planner's memorandum included with this report dated February the 10th reviews the application and provides it conforms to the Bayham OP and our general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Staff and planner concur the zoning application meets the policies, and we recommend approval to change the zoning to the site-specific Hamlet Residential HR-21 to permit the development of a single detached dwelling, and the draft bylaws before you for consideration. And I leave it with you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much for that report, Mark. Does anyone have any questions? Mark, it's proposed that the entranceway would be off Heritage.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from any member of council? All right, we have a draft motion that reads that report DS 0726 regarding the Gunther rezoning application ZBA 0226 be received for information. And that pursuant to Planning Act Regulations Bill 73 Smart Growth for Our Communities Act 2015, it be pointed out that at the public participation meeting held February the 5th, 2026, associated with this application, there were no oral presentations and no written public submissions regarding this matter, and that all considerations were taken into account in council's decision passing this resolution, and that zoning bylaw number Z 456/2003 as amended be further amended by changing the zoning on the subject property municipally identified as 53900 Heritage Line from Hamlet Residential Zone to site-specific Hamlet Residential HR-21 to permit the construction of a detached residential dwelling on the subject property, which removes holding provisions H2 and H3 and also requires the following provision. Section 9.12.21.2 to permit a minimum rear yard of 8.2 meters, whereas a minimum rear yard of 9.0 meters is required under section 9.10. And that zoning bylaw Z 822-2026 be presented to council for enactment. Mark?
Through Your Worship, just one correction. It's a typo. In the paragraph of the resolution where it says from Hamlet Residential HR, it should actually be HR H2, H3 zone to site-specific Hamlet Residential.
HR H2
It should have HR H2, H3
Yes, thank you.
zone to the site-specific.
That adds clarity.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. With that amendment, Deputy Mayor Weisler.
I will move.
Thank you. And Councillor Chilcott, you'll second? All in favor? That is carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Moving on with section 13, Finance and Administration, 13.1 Correspondence, and 13.11 to receive for information. 3 items. Item A, County of Prince Edward regarding Bill 21, Protect Our Food Act 2025. Item B, Municipality of Marksday, Warren regarding Life Labs closure in Greater Sudbury. And item C, Long Point Region Conservation Authority regarding the January 7th, 2026 minutes. Does anyone have any questions regarding this correspondence? All right. Then I would look for a mover and seconder for the following, that items 13.11A through C be received for information. Deputy Mayor Weiser will move, Councillor Chilcott will second, all in favor. Carried. 13.2, reports to council. Item A, report TR 0526 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2025 development charges. Lauren?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. Before you is our annual boilerplate report for development charges for the municipality. Just to remind council, in 2022, council established development charges for the water and the 2 systems and the wastewater. And then last summer, council established a development charge for the homogeneous building development that is throughout the municipality. This report just covers the development charge activity activity for the year, as well as potential upcoming capital projects that will be DC related eligible. 2026 Eden Pump Station and 2029 water and wastewater or water booster upgrades. The homogeneous one that will be in next year's report as staff identify parks, rec, or road improvements that relate to the DC portion of the new development charge. As council can see, we took in 35,000 for water for the main system, nothing in the Richmond system for DC, 237 for wastewater, and after adopting the homogeneous DC in August, we took in 57,000 for the general DC. Interest is earned on the development charge, and then down below it breaks down what the homogeneous DC is for each for fire, parks and rec, roads, and then general studies. If council has any questions on the DC activity for the year, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Lauren. Does anyone have any questions? Just as a comment, Lauren, I certainly appreciate Appendix A and the breakdown of where the homogeneous allotments are available. Okay. One question, though, I guess could be, if I understand correctly, there were provisions under the provincial guidelines that these funds either had to be expended within the following 12 months being collected, or what's the mechanism?
Or identified in the capital budget within 5.
Identified as where they will be. Thank you. Anything else from council? All right. We have a motion that reads that report TR 0526 regarding the 2025 development charges be received for information. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chilcott. Councillor Emerson. All in favor? Carried. Item B, report TR 0626, excuse me, by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2025 investment report. Lauren, please.
Thank you, your worship. Again, another annual boilerplate report. The treasurer is required to provide an annual investment report for all the treasurer is required to provide an annual investment report for all the investment activity, investments the municipality holds during the year. Council is aware that in March of 2025, a number of our investments were timed for maturity relating to Project Ojibwe's debenture paid off, and subsequently from there on. Council also recall that there was quarterly reports with updates about investment options. At the time, though, current short-term investments through a high yield general account, which we have, was still greater than going to a GIC. Staff will be bringing back a report, and the Q1 report of 2026 was some investment strategy options, both for the cemeteries, care and maintenance, as well as the general investment, as well as the DC funds. So it just outlines our activity for the year, the interest earned, as well as the existing position. Just so councilors are aware, there is no physical investments at year end other than the care and maintenance and the cemeteries. That investment position is currently sitting in our general operating account, which generates 2.85% on a high yield.
All right, thank you very much for that report, Lauren. Does anyone have any questions? All right, seeing none. The motion would read that report TR 0726 regarding the, excuse me, ahead of myself, TR 0626 regarding the 2025 investment report we received for information. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chilcott, Deputy Mayor Weisler, all in favor. That is carried. Now we'll go to TR 0726 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2025 fourth quarter variance report. Lauren, please.
Thank you again, your worship. This just summarizes our Q4 activity for the year end of 2025. Really the headwinds operating wise, fire had additional recoveries and grants, which we knew was projected in the official financial outlook report. And then we also have some additional taxation growth. So that was actually a positive headwind. So both on the revenue side, in operating budget, On the capital side, several projects were under budget. However, there was a number of projects that were either paused or deferred, which are outlined in the capital sheet, as well as action plans to either addressing them or where they align with our capital budget. Couple notable ones that had deferrals: tunnel line culvert removal and utility core repairs. The staff identified this project. At the time, Tillsburg wasn't ready to commit their share with us. So this is pushed back on their budget to relating, and this will come back in 2035, 2036 timeline.
Wow.
Manager of Public Works has provided his comments in here and what the short-term service level as well as asset impact would be. He's identified minimal as well as some additional cost savings that can be done in the short term with this work. As council is aware, we are still on hold on the Port Burrell Storm Sewer Phase 1C, waiting successful application of the federal grant program, or similar programs like the DMAP we've had in the past. Eventually, we're going to have to bring before reports on gesturing scope and size of the project, as well as funding mechanisms going forward. This is still in our AMP. This is our biggest deficient hole in our asset management plan. We also need to get a climate risk assessment report done. That is targeted to be worked on in 26, depending cost, scope, availability, and procurement, as noted. So we're hoping to get that one out in 26, as well as the pre-engineering for the Port Burrell stormwater, again relating to the work above. We'll have that out this year pending staff availability, to better align with the other phases and what we can afford, and as well as funding mechanisms and revised engineering costs. Facility audit, again, didn't get completed in 25. It's back on the capital in 26. It will likely be potentially pushed to 27. All depends on staff availability and issuance and capacity in 26. East Pier Engineering, as the CEO has alluded, we're in a hold position on that until more information comes from the DFO. Overall, year-end, our operating capital was in line to our expectations. Nothing was outlined in any of the quarterly reports that was brought to council's attention. Council has any questions on the main body, we could ask them now. Otherwise, we can go to each of the relating operating capital sheets and talk about any projects that you're wondering on status, completion, or any already carryover, as well as any work in progress and project status.
All right, let's pause right there and give council an opportunity. Is there anything here from a project deferred point of view or any concerns from a 10,000-foot view? I do have a question regarding the Maple Grove culvert repair. That's on the utility corridor. It's been brought to Tillsburg's attention 2-3 years ago and still has yet to be addressed. Do we need to advance correspondence or something? Do we need to initiate a meeting of the utility corridor group in order to move this along?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So Manager of Public Works has reached back out to Tillsonburg on both of these projects to see where they're at. They've have had some turnover in their engineering department over the last couple of years, which is part of the reason why these projects haven't moved forward. I'm going to give that a little bit of time to work itself out to see if Tillsonburg comes to the table with us. If not, then we may have to convene a meeting of that committee.
Well, that's the point. I'm trying to put forward whether we need to inject a little political will here to move this one along. I understand the tunnel road culvert, which is fine. There is a chance of collapse of that culvert, but I don't think it's as desperate as perhaps the utility corridor. They're both utility corridors, but one, the overburden's already been removed. This one is still eroding.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just through you, just to mention that the main cost with respect to the tunnel line culvert is the removal of the sand that remains there. So we use that for projects, and we loan that out to the Elgin County for their projects too, whenever they need. So if we move sand off of the culvert, ultimately we will be reducing our costs. So any year that we can realistically defer it without a failure of the culvert works positively towards our finances.
Well, absolutely. And that's why I'm not so concerned about that one. But is the Maple Grove one, it's still eroding. It was, when we seen it a couple of years ago, it was a mess and it seems to be getting deeper. Yeah. So if you need us to do something from a political nature, I'd be happy to sit down with the mayor of Tulsa. I would strongly encourage getting the climate risk assessment done. Because any application moving forward for anything for storm, sewer, water, we're gonna need that. All right. Regards to facility audit, the funding's reserved, it's there. It's whenever you can get the bodies around to get it done.
Correct.
All right. And regarding the East Pier Engineering, so far, that sounds pretty good to me.
Just an update on that, Mr. Mayor. So they have installed, DFO has installed a railing along the pier, along their section. If they come forward with any further information about rehabilitative works, that might impact the municipality's finances, that's realistically what we're reserving the money for. At this point in time, that's unknown. We don't believe that will be coming in the next short period of time, but then that allows us to have some reserve funds for our section of the pier should we need it going forward.
Absolutely. Since the funds were already raised in 25, they're sitting in a reserve account, or will be, I should say, for that purpose. So have I hit on everybody's concerns, or does anyone have anything else they wish to at a high level before we get into the operating sheets? Let's proceed, Lauren.
We'll go to the operating sheet, your worship. Couple items to note, slight drop in interest income earned.
Mhm.
Again, Bank of Canada interest rate cuts in 2025. General government had additional cost recoveries from tax sale and other sundry revenues. Fire was the main headwind, as you can see, 136,000 over revenue budget, which is basically one of the main drivers of the operating surplus. We received the 2024 and 2025 POA. The 25 POA is still pending, so we'll receive that in 26. Slightly lower building development, given the kind of nature of the current economic shape. Again, correspondingly, slight drop in the shared service time of bylaw. That really will fluctuate based on our shared partner Malahai's use of their bylaw enforcement official. A little bit of seasonality with RMA funding, which is also relating to some cost recoveries and some special billing work we do for the county. Slight increase in the winter seasonality, again, more winter events in December. Couple other things to note. We did receive additional student grants in the museum. Paid parking was stronger than what we had originally budgeted. And beyond that, that's pretty much it on the revenue side. On the expense side, council is aware that CAO's brought reports about aged out IT legacy and hardware. So we've done that, changes both in operating capital. Slightly lower fire calls and reduced fire protection. So again, headwind a bad year, fall off good year, just kind of the way the fire goes. Lower building shared service billing time. So again, less building revenue, less billing shared service time. And some of the other things are just basically seasonality. The rest of it is pretty much in line to what we expect for operating wise. There's no questions on operating, we can shift over to capital.
I have a question.
Councilor Emerson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. You have little notes on the reason for the variance except for 50.1, and that's 44% above. And I was just kind of wondering what's the cause of that extra 100,000 or so?
So we had additional planning resources for the transition over from Arcadis to the county. We had additional planning time, so we also had higher planning revenues. So there's a combination of additional staff time, additional Arcadis time, county transitional stuff, the general planning costs for anything that has to do with Lakeshore also hits that expense account as well.
Okay. They kind of match the revenue. Just curious.
like planning and building are really similar. They should be ran at a break even or to a reserve. So it is possible that part of the planning fees are under collected in relation to our costs. Again, we'll have a better idea as we get through the county transition of what our fees are in relation to our costs are.
Okay, but like a supplementary, Ms. Mayor, like why would you have development and tourism and then tourism and marketing? It seems like, what's the difference in the tourism part between both of those line items?
The tourism marketing relates specifically to the beach area, whereas the planning development tourism relates to any sort of ECDev or planning and tourism related at the county level or administered brochures or related advertising that's done in that department.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, any additional questions? Lauren, I am curious both on the revenue and the cost side, they balance out. The water. You know, we're looking at $80,000 increase over what was budgeted. What happened?
60,000 went in the ditch.
So that was be the cost, but how'd the revenue side keep up pace with it?
The revenue side had additional housing growth, as well as the annualized cost increases, as well as some sundry cost recoveries. The development charge is no longer hitting the revenue of the water system.
Right.
The reason why the water system can really vary year to year, especially on the expense side and transfer, really relates to how much water loss we physically have.
Well, thank you for identifying that because that was a significant loss.
Yes.
All right. Okay, moving on then with the capital, if there are no other questions regarding the operating side, let's go to the capital.
So in general government, first one, liability reserve transfer. Again, it's a transfer to reserve, working capital transfer to reserve, the election reserve transfer to reserve. The DC study is complete. It had slight savings. That savings has been suggested to go to working capital. The Office 365 upgrades, that is complete. That was from the tax levy. And recommendation is to establish an information technology reserve, which you'll see in the next report. Also deal with some additional IT transition costs with IT legacy, hardware, and other stuff that's coming into service life. Chamber upgrades was repurposed to IT service transitional costs. And guarantorship loan transfer is complete, as well as council where the guarantorship no longer exists. Moving over to fire, bunker equipment complete for the year. Savings was by the levy, complete. Radio reserve is a reserve that we established a number of years back. Eventually that funds have to go to the county for our shared service costs. The cistern was deferred because the facility is now being done in 26, not 2025. Fire equipment reserve transfer was facilitated, and then the transfer was then used to deal with the SCBA purchase, if council recalls the report from the fire chief. Thermal imaging was under budget. Portable radios was slightly over. Chief identified additional radios that were coming to end of life. Fortunately, had to buy additional ones because fortunately, when you get into looking at accounting and aging, sometimes when you start replacing, you realize there's more bad equipment that's got to be replaced at the same time. So that's why there's an overage there. And then the chief was successful in the provincial operating emergency grant, which was to support the emergency trailer. So that was funded via the tax levy through the provincial grant, which is in his operating budget. Going to roads, tunnel and culvert, as you're aware, has been put on pause until 2035, 2036. Move over to the tandem, savings there. Recommendation is to go into the equipment reserve, as you see in the next report. Elliott Road, slightly over, but it's funded via the tax levy or the gas tax, so it has no impact there. Gravel Road, OSIF, under budget, stays in the OSIF reserve. Carson, slightly over budget, comes out of the OSIF, the two wash. Sidewalks, slightly under budget. Again, recommendation is the savings goes back in the road construction. As you'll see in the budget amendments, there's some additional sidewalk work we've suggested. Road signs, both are operational and capital, so again, under budget. Guardrails, a lot of it gets stuck in operating, all depends on if it's accident replacement or other, so it's really hard to identify it, so it's there as a funding mechanism in case we have a lot of other damage. Roads need study, council is aware, and the AMP update was complete, under budget. Roadside brushing, savings there, recommendation to go to the road construction reserve. Hill management didn't happen this year. Manager of Public Works recommendation is to reserve that as well as expand that for next year in the budget amendments. Lakeshore study there under budget. And then obviously you're aware of the Port Provo Phase 1C pause waiting application of a grant, as well as getting the additional climate assessment, as well as some pre-engineering revised work done. That is the roads. Moving to water. This is just basically a trail off of the water line we did a couple years back with the ICIP Green Grant. We received the grant, but we also had to pay back the final holdback. So just a timing issue on that. So that's why it's an off-budget item. Moving over to wastewater, system equipment, number of items that had to be replaced outside the 46 came funded by the reserve for the wastewater equipment. SCADA was put on pause, wasn't required in 25. When we had the new position come in, he can do an assessment in 26, whether it's needed, as well as what year in the budget. Air blower is still more work to be done in 26. The wastewater sampler was complete, and the manhole rehab is an annual ongoing program. And the Eden pumps are sitting in work in progress. Once they're complete, they'll be funded out of the development charges outlined in the development charge report. Moving over to Parks Pavilion, Manager of Public Works identified that the roof work was not required. Recommendation is put that 10,000 back in the Parks and Playground. The storage sheds were slightly over budget. Unfortunately, they were funded by the tax levy, so they do come out of our surplus position. Utility corridor, not much was done, just a little bit of repairs. Again, refer to the report above why we didn't spend in that account. The canoe launch, we had 22,815 in 2025. That brings the total project cost to 38,171. The prior 15 and change was 2024 WIP. So originally that budgeted for 60, total project was 38,171. Remaining savings stays in the Canadian Community Reserve Fund. East Pier Rehab is outlined in staff reports on hold, with the 50K going back into the Parks and Playground to reserve that for future need for the pier. Facility audit, reserve it to the facility reserve as noted. SCC, currently that project is 26, not a 25, so that's why it doesn't show up as the cost, other than some engineering work that was done in 25. Engineering well and other work. I mean, Lighthouse is still on a pause waiting grant council's decision, and that item is there. Marine Museum is complete. It was slightly over budget. Originally the budget was 100, it's 110 over. So we had a combination of the Enabling Accessibility Fund reserve grant, as well as the facility reserve. So some of that overage was funded out of the tax levy. But that is complete. And then the official plan review, it had 11,000 under budget. Recommendation is additional amount goes to the planning and development.
All right, thank you, Laura, for that overview. Thomas?
Just one point to clarify, the Marine Museum was 10,000 over, the total project cost was 110.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Any questions on the capital? Okay. Thank you again for that, Lauren. The motion would read that report TR 0726 regarding the 2025 Q4 variance report be received for information. Moved by Deputy Mayor Weisler, seconded by Councillor Chilcott. All in favor? That's carried. Item D, report TR 0826 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2025 surplus allocation. Lauren, please.
Thank you again, Your Worship. To report to council, our surplus at the end of 2025 is $585,518.16. The surplus represents capital portion of 388, 643.92, and an operating surplus of 196, 874.24. As outlined in the previous report, major amount of the operating surplus was from the fire additional revenues that we weren't expecting. And outside of that, we would be within a 1 to 1.5% of our operating budget. So that's considered a pretty normal variance. On the capital side, we noted the project work above, additional savings in public works for the truck, a couple additional road savings, a couple projects that didn't spend their whole allocation. So below in the two next appendixes, A outlines our reserve position at year end, as well as recommendation from staff for establishing a new reserve called the Information Technology Reserve, as well as our sale of asset report and recommendation for those proceeds.
All right, thank you for that, Lauren. Any questions regarding this report?
We can pause if they want to talk about the appendix.
Let's talk about Appendix A, the surplus transfer report. And again, just to make sure it's abundantly clear that $300,000 surplus from capital was some savings, but mainly some deferred projects.
That's correct, Your Worship.
All right. I mean, if you just read the first paragraph, and you're talking about a $585,000 surplus. But when you start to understand where it came from,
Yeah, 140 was fire.
yes,
75,000 plus was from public works. 25 plus was from sidewalks.
yes,
Under budget, you start working through each of the projects and looking at the staff recommendation for reserve transfers. Each of the recommendation relates to projects that don't find savings or projects that didn't get completed or started.
correct. That's the point. Okay, let's go through Appendix A.
First one up, 27,000 to establish the Information Technology Reserve is outlined in the capital report above. We had savings in both Office 365 as well as council. It's good prudence to get this reserve established. We just got caught last year with a lot of aging IT software and hardware, and this would help establish some smoothing going forward in IT across the corporation. 92,000 for the equipment reserve. That was what we were under for the equipment for Public Works tandem. So recommendation is to put that back into the Public Works equipment reserve.
And that's the savings that will be realized on those tandems.
On the one that we already received in 25.
Yes. Okay, just so it's clear. All right. The next, the hill management.
Unfortunately, we didn't do this project or program in 2025. So it's just reallocation of the 30 that wasn't done
So it goes back into reserve for
for the
it.
road construction, correct?
All right,
25,000 savings in sidewalk, recommendation back in the road construction reserve to fund future sidewalk upgrades.
all right, thank you.
Next one, 15,000 under in the road brushing program, back into the road construction reserve recommendation.
Okay,
The next one is $10,000, which originally was supposed to be doing for the SCC roof and pavilion replacement. Wasn't required. Recommendation is put 10,000 back in the parks and playground reserve.
okay,
The next one is the East Pier engineering work that wasn't done, pending what's going on with the DFO input. So 50,000 back into the parks and playground reserve for future engineering work to be performed on that.
all right,
Originally, we had 30,000 in the envelope for the planning report for capital. We were 12,000 under budget. Recommendation is to move the 12 in the planning reserve to fund any future planning reserves, as well as any future overages that could happen from additional work and updates in this year and the future years.
all right, thank you.
Facility audit to fund the remaining 30,000 that come out of the tax levy in 2025, which will bring that total reserve amount for that project to be 60,000 funded out of the facility reserve in 2026. And council's aware the next two reports ahead have it as a budget correction memo for the budget amendment. The next one is we had some leftover general capital savings as well as some general operating savings. Good prudence is to put some money back into working capital. We have been using that aggressively the last couple of years to fund projects from budget to budget that council approves in year. So that gives some council some ability to have some working capital in case items come up in the middle of the year, studies, reports, items that are coming out of the normal budgetary cycle. And basically, the last one is the rate stabilization reserve. Also aware that at the operating budget, we used just over 93,000 to bring the tax levy down. Staff recommendation is to put 244,000, the remaining surplus back in the
Mhm.
rate stabilization reserve. Again, of that 244, 140 was fire. And the prior year's fire was at a substantial operating loss to budget.
Yeah.
It's just a tailwind of the original headwind.
To be specific, is proceeds from the fire marquee.
Fire marquee and cost
Yes.
recoveries, yes.
Yes. Just to make it clear for people who are watching. Okay? Anybody have any questions thus far? Okay, moving on then.
So moving to Appendix B,
Mhm.
before we do that, I'm gonna go to Appendix C, which is just the sale. We sold two parcels of land on John Street in Vienna. Net proceeds after legal, planning, and other relating costs and net of HST was 30,539.26. Staff recommendation is to put that into rate stabilization reserve. It's basically the most prudent way going forward. It gives council flexibility if they want to use that reserve for operating your capital or whatever going forward. That is also incorporated up in Appendix C, so I thought it would be more prudent to hit the sale before we look at the net position of all the reserves.
Lauren, is it appropriate to use proceeds from capital sales for operating funds?
Yes and no, your worship. At times you can use a reserve to sustain the tax levy if you have a larger or a jumbo capital, which puts pressure on the tax levy and affordability in other departments. So sometimes you need to bring a reserve in to make the tax rates palatable for the business community, the farm community, the residents.
Yes, but you hit the nail on the head. What I was suggesting was capital for capital. If you're having proceeds from a capital sale, should those be directed for a capital purpose? It's just a philosophy.
You could go both ways. I know that sounds like a gray answer, your worship,
It is a gray answer.
but if you go back up, if council backs up and looks at Appendix B.
Yeah.
Our capital reserves are funded and reserved out strategically to deal with the substantial capital needed in 27 to 28, so we have a tax smoothing,
Yes.
not another tax spike.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to say you're disposing of a capital to help fund a capital, not
But-
to underwrite operations.
But just to clarify, if you put it into the rate stabilization or road construction, end the day, it will still keep your tax levy within
Well,
what
theoretically,
council's desired end rates are.
okay. It's just a little more muddled under the rate stabilization. It's all right with me. Let's go through Appendix B then, unless there are questions in addition to what I asked on Appendix C. All right. B, please.
General message here for council is our reserves are extremely healthy looking at the end of our fiscal position of 2025. Right now, the council is aware that we have no debt officially on our books at the end of fiscal 25. We will see what the end of the SCC project and what our net debt position is. But if you go back and look at our reserves in end of 25, at the end of 2014, 15, we really rebuilt the reserves, getting through that transition area of absorbing Project Ojibwe's dad. Working capital's back up over 100K, extremely positive. Equipment is over 132K, extremely positive. Road construction's over $500,000. Definitely needed for when you have large capital projects in 27 and 28 for the tax levy smoothing. Your waterworks is just under $1 million. Your rate stabilization is just under 422. Council could repurpose some of that reserve. Council could repurpose any of these reserves at the request and have staff bring back a report if they so feel. really, we're in a comfortable position. The only spot that could put us in a little bit of concern on the reserves that are noted is our fire equipment reserve. But council also aware that this year we have a substantial amount of fire equipment that is funded by the tax levy, and next year we have a slight drop off. So that's the only spot of weakness. If we look down at some of our reserves, our restricted reserves and our obligatory reserves, they're even healthier. You have sewage reserves in excess of 3.6 million. You still have the environmental reserve to deal with any sort of transitionary or any environmental park programs that council wants to do. You still have just a shade under 300,000 in the Vienna Community Improvement Fund after finishing the canoe launch. You have over 213,000 for the Parkland, which is more than adequate to do the Eden Pavilion that Councilor Chilcott had asked for in this year's budget. And you still have positive balances both in gas tax and OSIF, with them two combined just a shade under 400,000. And then you got development charges bringing up the rear of almost 866,000. Extremely positive reserves that can aggressively keep with the AMP and the capital in 27 and 28 and allow staff to insert them to make the tax rate smoothing going forward manageable for our residents.
All right, thank you, Lauren. I'm going to throw this one out there because I think there's a little confusion between this report and what you read in the Elmer Express today. When they talk about the municipalities across Elgin, including St. Thomas, and what the reserves are, that was based on the FIRs from 2024, correct?
Correct, your worship.
So these are a year later. Your numbers here.
The 3.12 or 3.2 that was in the Elmer Express today is actually our opening position on all the reserves in the first column combined, which includes our reserves, our reserve funds, our deferred revenue, and also they include development charges. Development charges are extremely restricted, only can fund future capital.
Well, exactly. But
deferred revenue has extreme restrictions, and reserve fund has specific user funded restrictions. So just because we have 13.2 doesn't mean we have it at our disposal.
we don't have 13.2. If I did the math, we have 11 point something.
Because now we paid off Project Ojibwe.
That's the point I'm trying to make clear. We don't have $13 million in reserves right today.
Correct.
Though that was reported in the paper was based on last year's.
2024 year-end
Okay.
fiscal position.
All right, just so it's clear as mud. I don't want people out there saying, bam, sitting on $13 million. We're not. We had to use some of that to discharge that debt. But we are in fairly good, healthy position.
We're sitting on about 11.5 right now.
That's according to my math, but thank you for the clarification. That's why I raised it. Any questions on the reserve fund balances for 2025? Or, excuse me, these are the proposed, providing council approves of the transfers.
These are the proposed staff recommendation for the reserve transfers and recommendation from the operating and capital surplus, as well as the sale of asset report recommendation as well.
Okay. All right, any additional questions from council members? All right, thank you for the report, Lauren. I'm going to read the motion that's before us. That report TR 0826 regarding the 2025 surplus allocation be received for information, and that council establishes an information technology reserve, and that council confirms the 2025 surplus transfer report attached hereto as Appendix A, and that council confirms the 2025 revised reserves, reserve funds, and deferred revenue report attached hereto as Appendix B, and that council confirmed the 2025 sale of assets report attached hereto as Appendix C, and that council directs staff to bring forward an updated surplus of assets report for all departments of the municipality. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Emerson will move. And Councillor Chilcott will second. Before I call the question, Lauren, would you quickly describe what an updated surplus of assets report is.
So at our next senior staff meeting we have monthly, I'll be requesting all the department heads to give me a listing of any redundant equipment that needs to be surplus because it's soon to be replaced. Any identified land surplus or any road allowances that potentially could be for sale. It's basically just a cleanup report. If there's anything odds and ends to sell, then it gets captured. And we're just trying to be prudent with our assets that we do have, both land, physical, and equipment that we don't use, need, or have replaced.
Thank you for that. Okay, with that clarification, all in favor of the motion? That is carried. Thank you, Lauren. And report TR 0926 by Lauren James, Treasurer, regarding the 2026 fiscal outlook report. This is the crystal ball.
I wish it was, your worship. It's just a snapshot of today, what staff and what I've seen for trends for the municipality for a number of years. I've been your treasurer for 12 years, so I feel like I have a really good handle on what items can happen, ramifications, and the macro, as well as the micro setting of our local economy. Elgin County experienced tax growth in 2025. BAM actually experienced 1.9. However, this was trailing from 2024 and 2.5. Really, it was trailing because of three reasons. We had three large industrial tax assessment growths in Ward 3. Otherwise, it was pretty well. If you take those out, 2024 was actually anemic in comparison to 2025. So we are picking up some housing. As council is aware, there's some active subdivisions, some new developments, some land severances. So there's new assessment coming on board. Again, a lot of that's going to depend on the current rate environment that the Bank of Canada does. Bank of Canada has a sitting meeting in March. And right now, unfortunately, down south, there's a lot of pressure from President Trump on the Federal Reserve to remove Fed Chair Jerome Powell and to slash interest rates. As we are a connected market with the US, whatever the Fed does, we're kind of lock, stock, and barrel. So there could be some fallout from that, which could also reduce interest income, but it also could spur economic activity because people can access cheap borrowing. So the positive of that is potentially increase in development charges, both in the water, wastewater, as well as increased collections in the homogeneous DC. If we have new development, you're going to see new operational revenues increase, both from water consumption, wastewater consumption, as well as some sundry and other auxiliary revenue, because now we have more population. However, with more population comes expanded levels of service, a word that is challenging for most council to understand. That every time we establish level of service, that really defines how much we want to spend and how much we want to provide and how much flack we want to give or receive from residents. Is really what it comes down to. Expenses. Municipality is like a business, no other. Fortunately, we're a municipality, not a for-profit or a private corporation. Core inflation is slowing in 2026. Again, it's going to determine where core inflation lands, as well as some of the interest rate cuts. We are still impacted both from steel, aluminum, and product content tariffs that are impacting North America. Really, we're at the mercy of what happens with the current CUSMA, USMCA, NAFTA 2.0, the current trade agreement between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Really, that's going to follow as we are an automotive banana belt area. A lot of people related to agriculture, a lot of people related to automotive out here, two correlating, and with the U.S. being a huge export market for our area, there's a fallout. In addition, our Canadian dollar will fluctuate, and when we get some materials, both in the water, wastewater, and some direct materials that are based in US dollars, we pay more because our dollar depreciates. So there is some risk there. And there's also some turbulence in the United States with how the US deals with their current deficit and how they perceive dollar and their treasury bonds. So I know this might sound on a large macro level, but it does trickle down to the impacts to residents here, as well as some of our costs. And basically the biggest expense headwind for us is continually dealing with some existing retirements, recruitment, and defining specialized labor and certain roles in municipality, particularly in water and wastewater, as well as we've had slow intake of summer students for museum programs. And some of our job requirements have a tight or low or shallow skill setting of applicants. So we might have a posting out, it's widespread. We only get 2 applicants, whereas years ago we would have got 20. So the job market for some of these skills and techniques is getting thinner and thinner. So demand's getting higher, which also raises compensation and aggressiveness of municipalities trying to also recruit similar or same positions. So there's a give and take on that. Right now, the biggest unforeseen capital expense for the year is this building and expansion. To date, we haven't estimated any cost overruns, but it could happen, which also impacts future budgets, as well as where the end debt servicing period and amount will exist on this project. But to date, there is no cost overruns, nothing projected. You'll see that in the quarterly reports brought out, as well as if there is additional, you'll also see a staff report come out to identify it immediately, either from myself or the CAO. As I alluded to, the Q1 report this year coming up will outline some investment options. I'm working with 7 different investment firms to flex our current financial position, as well as also help our cemetery boards, our care and maintenance get a higher yield on their investments. So you look for that in the Q1 report. Again, a lot of it's going to be contingent on what the Bank of Canada does in the March meeting. And tariffs. Tariffs is still a word that we're dealing with a year plus later. It seemed to be a word that I was driving home last year, and nothing has changed on that front. We've seen the devastation it's done to some of our local automotive community, some of our trade relations, businesses relocating or doing reductions of labor. Additionally, with tariffs, it also impacts what consumers can afford, food costs, their take home, and how they can afford to, keep paying their bills. In addition to that, we've also seen challenging times throughout 2025 where we had affordability both in the taxation collection side and the water and wastewater side. I will remind council that at year end, we actually finished slightly better than 24, but 25 was an up and down roller coaster of we're not meeting our normal average collection, we're off, and some months having additional 20 to 30% over and above arrears notices going out than normal average. We did also do a number of tax sale or tax registration letters. A number of those people have come forward and resolved it with few applications still remaining on our books. There's about 9 applications to date for next year on the docket. So I really want to make council aware that when we get to the next year's budgeting cycle, both operating capital, I can't imagine that affordability, cost, and pressures for our residents, our business community, and our farmers won't be even more further prevalent. And the positive thing for 2026 and going out of 25 was the municipality of BAM, along with Central Ogden Township of Malahide, successful in receiving the water line grant. What does that mean for the municipality? Well, right now we anticipate that our benefit is 9 million. We have 2 million of the consolidated entities reserve, as we are the major proportionate owner of the Purple area secondary water line service entity. But we still have some future work. How are we going to fund the differences? Are we going to implement potentially a development charge study for any people that connect to the water line? And what will be the net cost to the existing landowners? There's some still work there. I'm hoping to bring something back mid-year to council of what potential costs. We have to work with our counterparts over in Malahide and Central Ogden, as well as the water board. And just so council is aware, when we did the wastewater rates back in 2024 with Byron Tan from Watson's and Associates, all 3 models, so originally scenario 1 with full recovery with 0 debt, scenario 2, full recovery with no debt, they all factored in that the water line was going to be funded by provincial, federal grants or own source revenues. So I repeat, the existing water and wastewater rates have no change by receiving the grant. But staff still have to work on how the remaining funding deficiency or funding amount remaining has to be funded. And there's still additional work to be done on that. So it's not prudent at this time to forecast a number until we have the meeting with Malahide and Central Ogden, establish the terms of reference, see if there's an appetite for development charge to bring all the existing landowners' costs down. Now we're receiving this money. What does that mean for the water line system? Well, a hot topic last year was establishment of municipal service corporations. This is a substantial amount of money that the Port Borough Board is getting. Could the potential follow-up be establishing a municipal service corporation? How is it structured? How does BAM represent? What is the funding model? How much of this shifts our current debt and future liabilities to this entity? They're really tied to what, and because really the municipalities' rates are tied to their water rates that they charge us. So again, there's some work there, but this will all fall out as we get further along in the grant and working with our 2 area municipal partners. And the last one is the county road rationalization. This one, it's great in practicality from the county level, but has many negative outputs that could impact BAM locally. One, what is the level of funding that we're going to receive if we're contributed or donated an asset transfer, as in a road's downloaded to us? 2, will we receive a one-time transfer payment, or will there be an ongoing funding envelope? 3, what's the strains going to cause on our public works department from an operations in the form of maybe do we need additional labor or additional equipment? How does this impact our current AMP? We just finished that. How much of further funding gap do we have of our AMP if we receive contributed roads and contributed assets? And the main driver is, what is the age and condition of the roads transferred, and the sensitivity around bridges and culverts? Because everyone in this room knows that bridges and culverts can substantially accommodate to multiple roads in one project. So they need to complete with engineering reports, cost estimates. So there's still lots of work on what does the county's road rationalization really impact with BAM. However, if we receive substantial amount of seed money, it could be used for one of our major AMP deficiencies, like kicking off the stormwater sewer program.
Okay, thank you for your comments on that, Lauren. Does anyone have any specific questions? There's a lot of challenges, a lot of moving parts. Lauren, one of the things you mentioned with the appreciating dollar, you suggested that we would have higher costs of US goods. I'm not sure I agree with that observation.
So in the last 3 months, the Canadian dollar has actually appreciated against the US dollar.
It is appreciated against the US dollar, but essentially the US dollar has been depreciating against the world. That's where.
In the basket of the G8 currencies, it's actually laggard. It truly depends on what the outcome of Kuzma is. It truly depends how President Trump deals or handles with Fed Chair Powell, as well as how they deal with their budget deficit, which could also impact their treasury yields, which also then will further devalue their dollar. But also caution, if we don't have a trading partner, there also could be running our dollar too.
Sauce for a goose. Any additional questions? All right. We have a motion that reads a report TR 0926 regarding the fiscal outlook report we received for information. Moved by Councillor Chilcott, seconded by Deputy Mayor Weisler. All in favor? Carried. Okay. How long is this one going to be?
I can try to be 10 minutes. Unless council.
Anybody want
unless
to take a
council
break,
has
or would you
questions.
like to take a, anybody need a, well, I'm looking at you, man. Well, if you need a break, or I wouldn't mind. It's been a little over an hour and 20 minutes.
My ADD is kicking in.
We're gonna take a 5-minute break. All right, recess. then put, so I can eat my donut.
We're back on whenever you're ready.
All right. Welcome back. We left off at section report TR 1026 by Lauren James, treasurer, regarding the 2026 budget amendments. Lauren, please.
Thank you again, your worship. Council recalls, we had our budget open house meeting on January 15th. Two residents identified a duplication of two capital projects. The capital projects in question were the facility audit FA02, which is 60,000 funded via the facility reserve, and the East Pier Rehabilitation Engineering Work PR11, which is 50,000 funded via the 2026 tax levy. Council then requested staff to bring back a report of the above two items, and then to amend the 2026 capital budget and any applicable tax rates if needed. So FAO2 originally started in 2023, and this is the facility audit. Originally in 2023, it was 35,000 via the levy. That 35,000 was then put back in the general surplus at the end of 2023 surplus report. The next year in 2024, 35,000 was collected via the tax levy. Again, the project was deferred in 2024. However, at this time, 35,000 was allocated directly into the facility reserve based on the annual surplus report at the end of 24. Project was again budgeted in 25 for 60K, with 30,000 from facilities and 30 from levy. So just for you following at home, all that money is sitting currently in the facility reserve, with 5,000 sitting in the general surplus reserve. So going forward in 2026, 60,000 is funded via the reserve fund, which is the facility reserve, and no impact on the tax levy. Moving over to the East Pier Rehab.
Hold. All right. The first in 23 was moved over to the was moved over to which it was repurposed. All right.
Repurposed to the general surplus.
Repurposed. All right. Then the 24 to 35,000 was raised, was then
Facility reserve.
reserve.
Yep.
And then the 30,000
Come out of the facility reserve and 30 out of the levy,
yes,
which means there was 5 left in the facility reserve from the original 35.
could be when it's expended.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Moving on then.
2025 East Pier Rehab was 50K from tax levy. Fortunately, when we went to publication of the 2026 capital budget, I had it as a duplication. Apologize. Project it was deferred in 2025, so that actually savings takes off our tax levy of 50K, and that will be funded in 2026 via the Parks Playground Reserve via 50K, as council's noted in the surplus report that was just passed. So this will reduce the 2026 tax levy by 50,000. And then during through this exercise, I identified some additional potential budget capital amendments. With discussion with some department heads, including the manager of public works, we identified that the 25,000 savings in sidewalks in 25 that's currently sitting in the road construction reserve can be reallocated and used in 2026. Therefore, we'd be spending 125 on the sidewalk, 25 coming from the road construction reserve. No impact on the tax levy. The hill management originally was 30,025. No work was performed. 30,000 went to the road construction reserve. Discussion with the manager of public works. He can easily use the 30 plus the existing 30 that's allocated in the 2026 budget to deal with washouts and hill issues on Bam Drive and north portions of Clark Road. Now that project is 60, with 30 coming from the road construction and 30 from the tax levy. Going over the road brushing, again, manager of public works identified additional work that can be done in 26. So that 15 went to road construction reserve, which then will be coming out of the road construction reserve in 26 to help with additional drainage improvements throughout the municipality. Again, those above amendments have no impact on the levy. They're just prudence to try to catch up on work that didn't get done in 25 and try to get them caught up in 26. So really the tax levy impact is 50,000 as noted above from the East Pier Rehab. So now seeing below, it will bring our notional tax levy to 2.91. When we factor in growth of 1.9, which is assessment change year over year of new tax from the existing previous tax year rates. Staff are recommending only a 1% increase on the 25 tax rates for 2026. What this means to a household of 250, your year-over-year tax levy change for the local will be $20.41. Farm, $7.51 on a 400,000 assessed farm. On a commercial building assessed at 250, $33.43 local. Industrial at 250,000 assessment, $45.42. Effectively, this brings our 2025 to 2026 tax rate increase to exactly 1%.
Any questions, comments from council?
With no further pull from reserves as well.
All right, thank you for that one. Any questions? All right, thank you. Then, if no further questions, and we have a recommendation that report TR 1026 regarding the 2026 budget amendments report be received for information. And that council approves the capital budget amendments as noted in Appendix A, and that the appropriate tax rates bylaw be presented for approval. Mover and seconder. Councillor Chilcott, Councillor Emerson will second. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
All right, moving on with report CL 0126 by Megan Elliott, clerk, regarding the municipal assistance request, the first intake. Good evening, Megan.
Hello, Council, through you, Your Worship. Before you are the municipal assistance requests received from the first intake of applications for 2026. The specific requests are outlined in the report and attached. Staff don't have any concerns in principle and will work with the approved events for further details and documentation. There are 6 funding requests for Council to specifically address tonight, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you very much for that brief report. So the total funding requests are $8,750 out of a $9,000 budget item. Okay, and this, of course, is only the first intake. There's usually one more intake for the financial assistance or the grants or whatever you want to call this, municipal assistance.
That's correct.
All right. So, council, these are the requests out tonight. If you wish to grant the entire request, then you pretty much exhaust the budget. If you want to leave something in behind so that you can facilitate a second intake, then that's up to you to do so. If it were up to me, and I might make a suggestion, you could prorate this on a balance of $7,000, leaves you $2,000 in reserve for future request, or whatever figure you want. That's just a suggestion. That's 80% funding. Councilor Emerson.
To you, Mr. Mayor, what percentage was the second intake compared to the first intake last year?
It's a good point. Megan, do you have any information on that?
I don't have these specifics, but I do know that this captures majority of the typical events that we have. It's noted in the report as well. We don't have a request right now from Watermelon Fest as there's expected construction at the site. So I am not certain if that is being held elsewhere or not at all, but that was one of the larger requests that we usually have that's not included. Other than that, it usually is heavier in the first round.
Typically. Is there any expectation of additional applications? I guess that's what Councilor Emerson's trying to get at.
I would say so. We definitely still have a couple parades outstanding. Some of them don't necessarily ask for funding, but that doesn't mean that they might not in the future. And now that this program is getting a little bit more into the community, there could be new ones that we haven't had in the past.
Okay. Thank you for that. So council, entirely up to you. What would you like to do?
To you, Mr. Mayor, I would hold some back in case there is like new interest and maybe diversify the amount or number of public events instead of the traditional or in addition to the traditional things that have been asked.
Yep, I agree.
There may be some new thing coming, like a winter festival or something like that. Who knows? You know, and maybe more events like a downtown thing in Port Burwell or something that I kind of hear rumblings about. So, you know, I don't
Okay.
know if we should exhaust it all. We should encourage more diversity in events, I think.
Any idea of what would you like to reserve?
20% of the 9.
30%.
That's the mirror image of what I was suggesting. But
I
thank you
know,
very much.
I know.
Thomas.
Mr. Mayor, through you, this may help. So the report from the clerk for municipal assistance first intake came late last year because we had the late adoption of the budget. So May 1, council considered the first intake and prorated that at 80%.
I mean, if you want me to be different, I'll say 75.
Well, I don't know, but, so what's your thoughts, council? There's a suggestion on the floor. Council froze.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I would, if that was a motion from Counselor Emerson, I would second that. They do the 20% or the 80, as you would like to say.
Or 75. 78.5. Okay.
Right. Do you have a comment, Deputy?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't know what percentage it would be, but I'd like to see at least 3,000 held back.
3?
Well, that's 65, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a lot lower than.
Oh, it's fine. I mean, could they not, if no one else speaks for the funds in the second round, apply for additional? Or is it a one-time application? Like say nobody else comes up by the time, can we emergency reallocate that budget funds?
I would seek some clarity on that. They can only apply once per year, can they not, Megan? Under the program?
Through you, your worship, the municipal assistance policy outlines that there's 2 intakes.
2 intakes, but can the same applicant apply twice?
I would say so. I don't believe offhand that the language restricts that, but we would have to take a look. But just knowing that there are 2 specified deadlines.
Or we can allocate, we could easily pass a motion to allocate any excess to the people that previously previously applied. We don't have to ask them for another intake. If they asked for 2 and they got 1,600 and there's a $200 each left, you can just automatically bump the thing, can you not? Or stick it for them for next year or something. I don't know. It's pretty easy to reallocate without having to ask them for another application.
Unless the event for years
Is passed. Well, then they could get that for their next year's event.
Yeah. Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I agree. If we hold it back, we could give it to the groups. Doesn't matter if their event is already, they're still putting out the money. So if they need $2,000 in help, then and they only get 80% of that. At the end, if no one else takes that money, then we divvy it up amongst the ones that applied.
It's certainly, it's councils, they can do whatever they'd like to do with it. I would remind council that the surplus that was left in the account a year ago was redirected to the school lunch program, if you recall. So the point being, I'm not sure it's fair to the organizations in one side. Is it fair to the organization to say you're going to get 75% funding now, but just wait, maybe we can find you more later, or make a decision? Allocate it, either allocate it all, allocate a proportion of it, and wait for a second intake, or whatever you want to do. I thought it was that sometimes, if the Watermelon Fest, and I don't believe it's going to happen this year, but if it did, then you would be subscribed and you would be rating if you were approving all of them. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So I understand that Councillor Froze put a second out there if someone wanted to put a motion on the floor.
I'll put the motion. I don't wanna fabricate it or
Fabricate?
manufacture it. I don't wanna manufacture the motion, but I assume somebody with better language skills is crafting one right now that I would put it on the floor.
A wordsmith. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, so with the motion that's on the floor is that we're allocating 80%?
There is no,
There is no motion at the moment.
at the
but
moment.
Okay, so
Waiting for a wordsmith there.
I mean,
All right.
you can adjust it after.
then through you, Mr. Mayor, I would just request that can someone let me know where we're at with what's left? What are we holding over to the second intake?
If we prorate to 80%, we'll have $2,000 left for the second intake.
You have a comment, Treasurer James?
Your worship, the only outlier would be is generally in the past, we keep between 2 and 3 after the first intake. We're earlier, last year we're late. Watermelon Fest isn't happening. What happens at Watermelon Fest or another group wants to do something in the fall, post this building?
Yeah.
Or we have the kids group come, or a need from one of the other stuff. We have given up money right up to the last meeting in December before.
Agreed. That's why,
So I don't know if you guys want to go full bore or leave a little bit back.
well, I think the leaning is for council to hold back, but I guess it's a question of how much.
Well, if you don't,
My understanding is that they're settling or a suggestion is somewhere around a $2,000 reserve. Then some are suggesting maybe it should be 3,000.
We've
Council
landed
needs to make
between,
their
we've
decision on
landed
this.
between 2 and 3 in the past on the first.
hey, let's not do percentages then, just pick a number then. For the and then prorate from there. Seems like percents are,
7 out of 10 or 7 out of 9. So
30% of 9 is 6, right? It's 3,000. No, it's 2,700.
So if you,
66 and a third?
But you're still prorating 80% of the requests. If you want to leave $2,000, that's what it is because the requests are $8,750. So the proration is 80,000 or 80% of the requested funds.
yeah, does that satisfy you?
I'm fine. It's Rainey wants a little bit more, Deputy Mayor, excuse me, through your, if Deputy Mayor wants a little more, I'm fine with that too. We can split the difference then make it 75 or something.
So yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess my only comment was, I know in the past we've held a little extra back in case of OPP and extra porta potties. So we just have to be cognitive of those costs and whether those are inflated this year. And if we've used those in the past,
Hidden in the Public Works budget.
right? Okay,
Or the Parks and Rec budget,
I mean-
which we've done in the past where we've added an extra unit here or there.
right. Okay, fair enough. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm comfortable with the will of council. If they want to stick with the 2, I'm fine with that. Somebody put a motion on the floor. We can get going here.
Your worship, the resolution actually goes across 2 pages.
Yes, I know. Yes, I know. But this is prorating at 80%. That's what you've already got in there.
That's what we did last year.
All righty. All right. I kind of like staff who are long-winded that put lots of words. All right, I have a draft motion here. I'll read it. See if council is comfortable with it. That report CL 0126 regarding the 2026 municipal assistance requests, first intake be received for information. And that all facility and road closure requests be approved, subject to the provision of a liability insurance certificate in the minimum amount of $2 million, naming the municipality of Bayham as additional insured. And that the requests for a staff presence for road closure purposes be approved with the ability to utilize the OPP as a backup, and if utilized, compensate from the municipal assistance budget. And that staff be directed to advise external agencies of the approved events and obtain county approval for use of county roads for noted closures. And that all material requests be approved with a deposit of $10 per item to be provided by the municipality provided to the municipality, prior to the event. And that staff be directed to conduct lawn and facility maintenance as necessary prior to the events. And that all facility rental relief requests be approved, and that the following funding requests be granted with prorating at 80%. The Writers Festival, Edison Fest, Canada Day celebrations, Vienna Lions Kids Fest, Bayham Beach Fest. And that the municipality of Bayham reserves the right to revoke said approvals at any time for any reason, and approved timelines may be adjusted for the use of certain facilities or materials should they become unavailable due to construction or unforeseen circumstances. Councillor Emerson, does this meet with your approval?
Yeah.
So move.
Yeah, I'll move that. Could we add a line that we should hire an editor? So- But I'll make the motion. So-
Tongue in cheek, I assume.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Froze, you expressed interest earlier of
Yeah.
moving or seconding? Okay. Council. Does this meet with your your approval? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. You know, there were days, years and years ago, that we spent many sessions going through this grant program, and it was very painful. Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. All right, item H, report CL 0226 by Megan Elliott, clerk, regarding the updated appointment bylaws. What have you got for us, Megan?
Thank you, Your Worship. Once again, through you to council. Bayham currently has bylaw number 2024-050, being a bylaw to appoint municipal officers and employees for the municipality. This acts as an omnibus bylaw for all of the relevant appointments, but also includes members of staff that don't necessarily need to be appointed by bylaw. This report outlines which positions that are relevant to Bayham that shall or may be appointed by bylaw, and includes some streamlined draft bylaws that are recommended for us to move forward with, instead of doing the approach of the one large bylaw naming everybody. So this is presented as a housekeeping item since there's updates required to 2024-050 either way. So we recommend moving forward with the separate ones, which helps with clarity and ease of amendments when required in the future. So I'll leave it with you.
All right, Megan, thank you very much for that. Any questions? Seeing none, we have a motion then that reads that report CL 0226 regarding updated appointment bylaws be received for information, and that the streamlined appointment bylaws, including a bylaw to repeal bylaw number 2024-050, be presented for enactment. Can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Chilcutt will move, and Deputy Mayor Weisler. Supposed to give you a promotion there. Seconded. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Brings us to item I, report CAO 0726 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, regarding Ontario Provincial Police support for bylaw enforcement complaints. Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this report follows last meeting where our bylaw officer presented his 2025 annual bylaw report. The motion from council at that time was to return to council with information pertaining to the number of calls for OPP support for bylaw enforcement matters. So this report covers two different perspectives. The suggestion of over-reliance on the OPP as a secondary bylaw enforcement component and additional OPP costs that negatively impact the municipality's 2025 policing budget actuals. So the municipality's bylaw enforcement department is effectively one person full-time. And as an employer, the municipality is required to ensure a safe working environment for its staff. For a bylaw enforcement officer, the workplace is often on private property due to the nature of the job. Officers will enter upon private property to conduct complaint-based municipal business and often do not know what they may encounter. Sometimes, however, bylaw officers do know about particular properties either through notes taken on previous complaints or through discussion with the local police force with respect to their files. Often this occurs with respect to properties that have had repeated issues. It is commonplace in other municipalities, regardless of size, to request police support where threats to safety are known to have been made, or the property or persons living on the property have a known history. This approach ensures a higher degree of safety than if one bylaw officer to attend a property with a known history without a police presence. This approach is even common in larger urban areas as police forces will have a wider breadth of authority and ability when dealing with potentially volatile situations. The data presented in this report is aggregated. It was provided by our bylaw enforcement officer, and this report was also reviewed by the treasurer in regards to 2025 OPP costs. The report covers approximately 18 months, so we're looking at August 2024 until February 2026. Over this period of time, our bylaw division received and actioned 277 complaints. Of those complaints, only 12 gave rise to OPP support. Over 10 properties, 9 of which were in Ward 1. 4 of these complaints required OPP attendance on multiple occasions. And over the same period, the bylaw enforcement department, for comparison purposes, handled 98 complaints in Malahide, where only 1 complaint required OPP support. So the ratio there is that Bayham requires OPP support approximately 4 times as much as Malahide. However, a 4.33% utilization rate is low. Generally speaking, when the OPP do attend a property, they do so with 1 or 2 supporting officers. This was consistent across all cases. Examples of reasons noted in the report are that either the person on the property has a known criminal history, so this is 3 instances. Many different instances of verbally or physically threatening behavior towards municipal staff. And as an employer, the municipality, again, has a responsibility to provide a safe workplace, which is why staff do then seek the OPP to come and support them for secondary visits to properties. There was 1 instance as well where the OPP led a task force as part of the emergency response team with respect to an illegal trailer park. Interesting to note that even though our support is relatively low, it's worth noting that the complaint frequency in Bayham versus Malahide is approximately 3.7 times greater for whatever reason. This is the primary driver for why bylaw enforcement's time is more often used in Bayham than Malahide, approximately a 2-to-1 ratio. In regards to costs, and we did have some discussion around costs at the budget, particularly around 2026 costs. But I figured I'd carry this over just so council can see what our service contract for the OPP was in 2025. We had originally included in the budget $965,727 for policing support in accordance with their funding model. Council has received the report earlier tonight. Our police budget for the service contract was actually under budget. We were $960,382, under budget by approximately 0.5%. So at this time, staff do not see the current OPP utilization rates as a significant issue, nor a cost driver for the OPP service contract budget line. Leave it with you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions.
All right, thank you, Thomas. Does anyone have any questions? Councilor Emerson.
I do. Through Mr. Mayor to Thomas, it seems like we take whatever without much there's not much room to negotiate, but I would like to suggest that we write a letter and ask for support for a different funding model that recognizes the difference between rural and urban communities. Because I think all the rural communities in Ontario quite possibly could be carrying the weight of OPP costs in major urban centers with more social problems, etc. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Kind of, a lot of the larger urban centers have their own police forces, and so it might be a smaller pool, you think. What's your, I don't even know if the, I don't even know if the police model even be able to differentiate between rural and or urban patrols.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a tough question. Providing a delineation between urban versus rural when some municipalities have distinct urban and rural components would be difficult to do. I would remind council that out of the July or the January 6th budget meeting, there was correspondence to go out regarding the applicability of the funding model and the ability to rein in costs. So we already have sent out correspondence in that regard. This is certainly an issue across Ontario, and I know that other municipalities in rural Ontario are having similar concerns as well. Council also did direct looking into alternative policing models, and some, I know a report hasn't come back on this yet, but some high level information suggests that that would be difficult to implement here because basically that we don't have the density to support one unless we have a number of partners that want to jump on board with it. But even then, our density based upon our, population, geographic area and assessment base wouldn't support it. Municipalities, rural municipalities that have urban police forces generally border urban municipalities, like the City of London, for instance. But that's not something that's going to be wholly applicable here. This information will come back to council in the future once I have more information. But long story short, that the model, we know it doesn't entirely work for rural Ontario and for Bayham, but at this point in time, I'm not aware of another funding model that would work. And we already have advocated on our behalf through the operating budget that these costs need to be reined in.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the clarification. As a supplemental question, we note, you said in your report that you noted the difference between percentage of calls in the population between Malahide and Bayham. In addition to noting it, maybe we should explore the reasons why that is. Is it something culturally we do with government, or is it something in the nature? And maybe there's some kind of, if we learn the reason why culturally there's more bylaw complaints in this area than over there, and we could mitigate that somehow, we could save a lot of money. So I think other than noting it, we should explore it. Actually,
It's not I'm sorry, I was going to respond to that. I don't think there's that's not a bad notion, and I think it's strikes at the heart of what the community safety and well-being plan is trying to address. Preventative rather than responsive. And just going to throw an advertisement out. There is a session coming up, and it's next Wednesday night in St. Thomas. Presentation of the community safety and well-being. I think it's been distributed around across council members.
Yeah.
If you're available to go, register to go. But what you're suggesting, and I agree with you.
no, there's something
Right now-
alarming.
Right now,
Mhm.
we are dealing with the effects, right?
Yeah.
Is trying to identify those causes and be proactive on those causes in order to minimize the effects. That's what this whole community safety and well-being is trying to do. You're right. I don't know what the answer
It's
is.
almost embarrassing, actually, to tell you the truth. So
It is.
Because it makes it look like we're a community of hoodlums, and we're not, or vengeful people. So I don't know why that is, because I don't believe we are, but the numbers kind of tell it there's something, right?
going back to the statistics in the report, yes, it's 4.3% of the total bylaw calls, but the number of bylaw calls are out there. Why? I do not know why there's so many more in Bayonne than there is in Malahide. We have to recognize that we are a lower income area. Whether that has some commonality driving it, I honestly don't know, Tim. But there are some, excuse me, Councilor Emerson.
That's
But
okay.
there is something that's driving what's going on here, and it's it's broader than, it's not council led, but if there could be a council led solution, it'd be great. I don't know what that is.
I don't know, maybe there's a more influx of the diaspora is different from people moving here to the people that are here or something. And there's got to be some way to mitigate that cost a bit. And just make, and then as a result, you would just have a kind of nicer community.
I think overall we do have a nice community.
No,
but there are some
nicer.
elements- Yeah, there are some
Nicer.
elements that are creeping in. And it's unfortunate. Again, just to go on that vein of advertising, if you're available to attend that session, I do encourage it. Register, get in there, participate. And this is something that the Solicitor General had mandated 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Community safety and well-being plan. I think that's something that, I think it was 2018.
That's
It
what
might
I'm
have been,
thinking.
it might have been,
Yeah.
yeah, about 8
Yeah.
years ago.
The first plan came out when working French. So, yeah, so we're working on it. Okay, but thank you for your comments, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment as well that the OPP funding model is on Roma's radar.
Sure it is.
We had that discussion at Roma, so I do believe that this topic is going to be discussed on a more fluid level throughout many municipalities such as ours that have that urban rural divide and and neighboring a lot of those urban centers. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that comes down.
Just another quick comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor, to something Councilor Emerson had said that, in respect to, say, people that are more urban residents moving to Bayham, it's generally a more rural municipality, is something that has been increasingly commonplace since COVID. And I've seen it now in a couple of different municipalities and had a number of productive conversations at Roma about very similar things, that this does cause a rift in the community. And I'm not sure to what degree it translates into more complaints. But if you've got people that are from a city, for instance, moving to a rural area and expecting a certain lifestyle, but not understanding some of the spin-offs, for instance, or seeing the higher taxes and not getting city services because we just frankly don't have the density or the property tax classes to be able to do that, can create some dissonance, and that can create that kind of like oil and water divide between, certain people. So that is something that is very prevalent in rural Ontario. I'm not sure to what degree it, again, translates into complaints here, but it is something that is prevalent.
Well, to be clear, I'm not saying that's the reason. That was an example. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm blaming it on that. I'm not blaming it on anything, but we have two populations side by side. There has to be a difference between the two populations I mean, it shouldn't be, it's difficult to figure out, but I don't know if someone with the skill set looked at the differences in the population and or governance or social, I don't know, but there is something, because why would that number be there? And we're side by side, so it'd just be interesting to know, or to get some insight and possibly save some money, actually, or direct resources to a better, more productive use.
Thank you for your comments. Thomas, a thought is crossing my mind here. Is there any benefit of sharing these observations, say, with the community safety and well-being plan to the integration table? whether it's through Carolyn Cron or whether it's through Blaine Park, and just to give them this is the observation we have at this point. We don't understand why, but maybe there's something that they might have run across through the social services. So I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, that's not a bad idea. What I can do is I can forward this report over to Blaine. We have a CAO's meeting next Monday, actually, so I can probably bring it up with him then, just, as a sidebar conversation. Yeah, that's a good idea. We could probably do that.
Maybe we can start
The
dialogue and getting zeroing in on what's going on, because you're right. The observations there, it's supported by 18 months of data. Councillor Froze.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Thomas, CEO, amazing report. I really, really appreciate it. And to you, Councillor Emerson, I will say it. If you move onto a gravel road, it is going to be dusty. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I'm wondering also, and I agree with everything that's been talked about around the horseshoe until now. I'm also wondering if we're the victim of some unhappy vigilantes who just call frivolously and a lot of times baselessly, and that kind of, I know I've been the victim of that, and I live on Jackson Line. Generally, we're the neighborhood that Bob Gregson has no problem approaching me, saying, "Hey Dan," he pulls onto my yard, "Do you have a fire permit to burn that brush?" And I'm happy to say I do. Right? That's the neighborhood I live in. We help each other. We have funerals together. We have weddings together. And that's a community I want to live in, right? And so I'm just wondering if we're victims of a few people, maybe. So other than that, I agree with everything that's been said.
Thank you for those comments. Absolutely. Maybe there's some drill down that can be done on, because bylaw will know, we had 277 complaints. How many turned out to be nothing versus, and that might be indicative of some dissatisfied observation for someone observing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would have to look at aggregated stats on that too. But to Councillor Froze's comment, I do know of a few instances where, the bylaw officer advised me that there were complaints that were deemed as spite complaints or frivolous and vexatious, and we were able to do that under our bylaw enforcement policy at their sole discretion. We do have those that come from time to time. We did have a few of those last year.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you. Any more comments or observations or questions from anyone? I think there's been some good discussion on this. All right. Then I have a motion that reads that report CAO 0726 regarding the Ontario Provincial Police OPP support for bylaw enforcement complaints follow up to February 5th, 2026, item number 11.2B be received for information. I don't think you need any further direction than that.
No more direction, Mr. Mayor.
Well,
Willing to move that, Councillor Chilcott?
no, well, unless you're just going to do it, but direction to explore the differences in number of complaints.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to add that to it or not, but
I believe some of the discussion was around sharing the report with the county as part of the community safety and well-being plan, to start that conversation and doing it that way. And that's something that I can do without direction. I can just, it's a
Okay.
public
No,
report, I
but
can
yeah,
share it.
I'm just clear. That's all.
Okay. So Councillor Chilcott, you moved, Deputy Mayor Weiser, you seconded. All in favor of that? Perfect. It is carried. Thank you. Brings us to item J, report CAO 0826 by Thomas Thayer, CAO, the Ontario Trillium Fund Capital Grant application. Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a good news report. Lauren and I mentioned back at the capital budget meeting that we were going to be exploring some grant opportunities potentially for the ball diamonds. So this is a report under the Ontario Trillium Foundation, their capital stream. There is the ability to apply before March the 4th for their intake. Projects have to be completed within 12 months. Maximum project budget is $200,000. So based on that, in review with the treasurer and the manager of public works, we've identified both of the ball diamonds as options. So the first one would be capital item PR05, which is the Port Burwell Ball Diamond. This one would focus on lighting upgrades. And the estimated cost for that in the budget was approximately $200,000, reserve funded with the levy component. And PR08, which is a Stratfordville Ball Diamond. This one is strictly lighting, estimated cost of $250,000. 175 proposed from grants if possible with a levy component. So based upon some more recent estimate work that the manager of public works has led, what we can advise on is that the total estimated project value for the Port Burwell Ball Diamond right now, which would include lighting, geotechnical, new wiring, site grading, site restoration, it's approximately $140,000 plus applicable HST. They have had an update down at the Port Burwell Ball Diamond for the electrical cabinet, so there is a cost savings there. But this project already has funds reserved for it. It does not identify grants as a funding opportunity. However, if chosen, a grant would decrease the reserve requirement and potentially eliminate the tax levy impact. In regards to the Stratfordville Ball Diamond, this one comes in a little bit more because there's a few more lights required. There's also a new electrical cabinet required. The report identifies an estimated project value of approximately $175,000 plus HST. Now, we did have a conversation with Steve earlier this week, and he has some new figures from a local electrician in regards to the cabinet. So the total estimated project value will be closer to approximately $190,000. This project is 70% grant dependent, and with a $75,000 levy component. If we're able to be successful with the grant, then we could potentially offset a little bit of the levy impact, but we'd be able to move forward with this project. When we consider what to move forward with, obviously the budget and the way that the budget is structured for both of these items is important. We lean towards the Stratfordville Ball Diamond because it is grant reliant, whereas, as noted, the Port Burwell Ball Diamond has reserves that are available to it. It's also worth noting usership. So when I brought a report back to council in 2024, it identified that the Stratfordville Ball Diamond gets significantly more use than the Port Burwell one does. And we looked at approximately 3 years of data. And it was, I believe the numbers were a little more than four times the usage in Stratfordville than Port Burwell. So when it comes to structuring a strong grant application, you have to demonstrate things like need and utilization. We would have wording from the ISIP grant here that we could potentially revisit because this was originally included as a part of that before it was de-scoped. And then higher utilization in a given year will add weight to a grant application. So on that basis and in discussion with staff, we make the recommendation to move forward with the Stratfordville Ball Diamond under this program. And I'll leave it with you and council for any questions you might have.
All right, well, thank you for that, Thomas. And just to clarify, the reserve already has the funds in it to do the Port Burwell Ball Diamond.
That's correct. There's 135,000, and that's before any reserving today. So that money is already there.
All right.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't understand the last comment. I need clarification. Like, are you saying there's a preference for Stratfordville to Port Burwell,
No.
or what I don't understand. Please explain that.
So the rationale for Stratfordville over Port Burwell would be that we already included the Stratfordville Ball Diamond lighting as part of a grant application. And in 2023, council resolved to apply to de-scope that plus the open air pavilion off of the expansion in an attempt to cost save. So we already have language in a grant application that we've used in the recent past to justify works at this ball diamond. The utilization of the Stratfordville Ball Diamond is also significantly higher. We use our rental data for that because the Stratfordville Hall Foundation does rentals for both ball diamonds. So we have greater rentals here, and we can use that to build a stronger application than we potentially could for the Port Burwell Ball Diamond. The last comment is regarding the what's in the budget. So the Port Burwell Ball Diamond is already funded through reserves and the levy, whereas the Stratfordville Ball Diamond has a 70% grant component. So this would also satisfy that grant component, and with the levy money available, we'd be able to do the project.
Potential is that both could get done.
Okay, that's good because, my only comment to all that is if it's not desirable place to be, then people won't use it. So if the upgrade happens, then maybe usership goes up. Maybe that's the reason why.
Possibly.
And
Or
just
contributing factor. I'm not saying the
Possibly.
reason why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just a note on that. So we make the application for the Stratfordville Diamond if that's what council resolves to do. And if we're successful, then we'd look at procuring possibly in joint for both because we have quotes for lighting from the same company. So we potentially, and there's very few companies out there that do like large scale ball diamond lighting. We expect that if we put out a tender or something like that or an RFP, then we're likely to get the same people that are bidding on it. We'd likely do it as a joint procurement if we get the grant.
There might be opportunity for additional savings. Right. I think the point, and I think it was salient to me that the paper, the background work was originally submitted to ISO and then was de-scoped out. What he's saying is repurpose that work for the grant. You don't reinvent the wheel. Minimize staff.
Yeah, but kind of through Miss Mary, but kind of the language is we'll apply for that. And then if that works, we're going to apply for Port Burwell. Is that?
No. The money's already reserved for Port Burwell.
Okay.
It's there.
Okay.
Okay?
No, okay, now I understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what he's saying is if we are successful in getting an Ontario Trillium grant, this one, and if you tender both projects together, there might be a mobilization savings.
So what grant, you already have the money is what you're saying in
The
Port-
money's already reserved.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Councillor Chilcott.
So basically what you're saying is regardless of the grant outcome, Port Burwell is going to get done. It's
The money's there.
Stratfordville that doesn't have the funding in order to
Right.
do the ball diamond. So
Right.
grant or no grant, Port Burwell is done. If we get the grant, Stratfordville's done.
Thank you. That's,
Simple, yes.
Close enough.
Yeah, very simple terms, yes. Or should we say it's enabled, whether we, council gives the nod, that's one thing, but the fund's there to do the Port Burwell. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, Councillor Froze?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Why is there money for Port Burwell if Stratfordville is utilized more and there's no money in the budget for Stratfordville?
Stratfordville was originally included in the ISIP program and then de-scoped out in 23. When did the reserve allocation happen for the Port Burwell?
That's what I'm looking to confirm, Mr. Mayor. I believe that allocation was made in the February 22 or 23 surplus report that Lorna brought
Right.
forward.
Right.
We had been looking at the Port Burwell ball diamond because a couple of the light standards out there are a little bit questionable, and we didn't end up moving forward because we RFP'd and it came in over cost. So we ended up reserving the funds.
Yeah.
And revised costing on it has put it back in the scope.
Yes, that's correct.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. Is there any way to combine, since it's the same, it's the same project per se, just in two different locations?
My-
Kind of confusing.
Yeah. And my understanding for this one is that it's intended to be one site and the maximum project budget amount is $200,000.
Okay.
So if we were to combine them both, we would be a little over 300,000 and would be outside the scope.
Thank you. And just a quick supplementary. It was there and now it's gone.
That was a quick supplementary. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I will come back in just a second. Just give me a minute. It's all good. Sorry.
I think Deputy Mayor, if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
I think it's hard to include the Port Burwell ball diamond if it's not being utilized. It would not make sense to put it into a grant application, right?
I think the way what staff are trying to suggest is that how it's already been identified within the budgets, Councillor Froze, that the funding has already been allocated in a reserve fund for Port Burwell, but the Stratfordville project only had partial well, it'd be relying on levy plus grant.
Mhm.
That's how it was identified in the capital budget. Oh, but anyway, your point's well taken. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. I remembered now. My question was, are we only allowed to apply for one project? Or can we apply for two?
It's a good question. I believe for this one, it is only one, but I'd have to double check on that one. I don't have that information for you tonight.
Well, supplementary to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, well, if you could apply for both, then what's in reserve fund can get reappropriated for something else.
Agreed. Thomas, is there a deadline on the application?
This would be 5 p.m. on March the 4th. So we have a little less than 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, council. I would hate to miss the opportunity. I would give them the nod to go ahead and get one. Councillor Emerson, you're right. If there's the opportunity for making two, I'm not so sure you can get that done. For Burwell, you've already got the information for Stroud.
We do have the information for Stratfordville. It would be a little bit more work to make a case for Port Burwell, especially since we already have all the funding allocated in the budget for it. The priority would be Stratfordville if council resolves to do so.
Let's go with the stronger case, my recommendation. But I do like your thinking.
I think you should try your best to do both of them, actually, to tell you the truth. Because like, whatever it is, 90 grand is 90 grand, right? Or whatever it was, whatever's in reserves there in Port Burwell.
It's 130, 165.
Yeah, well, it's 165 minus whatever the 35% is or whatever. I don't know why we wouldn't try for both, and actually kind of wonder why we're at this point now with the March 4th deadline.
The grant program opened up 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Chilcott.
Thank you. I have applied to OTF for different functions, and I believe you can only apply to one project, like in one area. We did multiple items at the museum.
Yep.
We didn't get it, but, you know, we could do it there at the museum, but I don't think we could have done there and somewhere else at the same time. I could be wrong, but that's the way I understood it. And you're right, this grant comes out and you have about 4 weeks to get everything done. You almost have to have everything done ahead of schedule before it comes out so that you can apply in time.
And just if I can follow Councillor Chilcott's comments. So when we knew that this grant program was coming out, we'd be able to hit it, we had to reach out to vendors to get quotes, because one of the things that we need to submit is at least one substantive quote for the components involved in a project. It would have been too tight to get this to council on February the 5th with all the information we needed. This is the only available council meeting for us to do so before the deadline, which is why it's on the agenda tonight.
Okay, anything else? We have a motion before us that reads, Mr. Mayor. Go for it.
Motion would be that report CAO 0826, Ontario Trillium Foundation Capital Grant application be received for information, and that council supports an application to the Ontario Trillium Foundation Capital Grant Stream for improved lighting at the Stratfordville Ball Diamond.
All right, we have a mover and a seconder for that. I see Councillor Chilcott, Councillor Froese, all in favor?
One question.
Okay, take that back.
So we are going ahead with the Port Burwell regardless of what we're applying for this grant. That's what
It's in the budget.
It is budgeted for. The timeline right now is unknown because we want to know if we get this grant or not, because then we'd be able to do joint procurement if possible.
And it's cheaper.
I get it. I get that. I'm asking for
Okay.
assurance.
Assurance.
Yeah, I am.
All right.
Okay.
Now, all in favor? All right, thank you. Carrie. Which brings us to the bylaws. Somebody has got a lot of bylaws. Okay,
As presented.
yeah, that'd be the way to do it. Does everyone have a printout of the bylaw of the, okay, the agenda, so you know what we're talking about? 11 bylaws. Seven of them deal with appointment bylaws. How about we do it this way? I have a motion before us. It reads the bylaws numbers 2026-007,
There it is.
2026-008, 2026-009, 2026-10, 2026-11, 2026-12, 2026-13, 2026-14, Z820, 2026, Z821, 2026, Z822, 2026. We read it first, second, and third time and finally passed. Moved by Councillor Chilcott. Seconded by Deputy Mayor Weiser. All in favor? Carried. I think we lost Councillor Froze. All right. We will be going into an in-camera session. Let's put the motion forward that the council do now rise to enter into an in-camera session at 9:25 p.m. to discuss confidential item regarding advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. That's the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Support Services Corporation. Mover and seconder, Councillor Chilcott, Councillor Emerson, all in favor? That's carried.